Call the meeting to order. I have 5:31. And this is an emergency. This is an off-cycle trustees meeting with one item on the agenda. The request to use the library flagpole, June 2022. We don't have any minutes or any reports to approve, so we'll get right into the agenda item. Catherine, can you give us a rundown on where we are up to date?
Yes. The Human Rights Commission has flown 2 flags at the Civic Center, the Pride flag and the Juneteenth flag, for the last several years. And there was some interest in locations that would be a little bit more visible. So they went to the town council and requested use of other flagpoles. And it went by the Veterans Committee as well. And veterans expressed that they would prefer to not have other flags fly with the American flag and the POW flag. So other alternatives were looked at. Could there be other flagpoles? In the meantime, Boston has had an issue with flying flags on their municipal pole, and it went all the way to the Supreme Court. And in that case, it comes down to policy, where so often we know that happens. It's all about the policy, that if the policy is written the right way, you know, it's fair and you get what you need and you get what you want. I think, so in our case right now, the town council met on the 25th, and they ended up with a motion that would encourage the library trustees to support the request to fly flags, those 2 flags for the month of June, on the library's, the library has 2 poles. So it wouldn't be with the American flag, it would be on the separate, pole. So the complications here, the complications further down the road, is that, you know, Tom Mullen has given his opinion, and there are ways to work around this. The biggest difference between the town and the library is that although the library is a municipal building, we are a public forum, and there's no way to get around being a public forum. And the rules for a public forum are going to be slightly different than the rules for a government sponsored kind of thing. So because this is so complicated, and because it's May and June is coming, I think one option is for you to agree with the town council and propose a one-time monthly event to fly these banners for the month of June this year, and state that this is not to set a precedent. And then in the fall, we'll gather more information and see what we can do about policy.
Just one question on that is, by default, by doing a one-time thing, doesn't that set the precedent? Or
well, that's why I'm saying you can include in your motion that this is not intended to set precedent. That it's
understood. I guess my take on it would be, all right, so then let's say hypothetically we approve it and we say, hey, this is a one-time thing. Then next time, then what's the reason not to? Like, oh, well, we're asking for a you follow what I mean? The logic behind it, I think, if we do,
you did it one time before, so why can't you do it one time again?
Exactly. And then, I mean, just from an overall perspective, then it seems like we're also picking and choosing with being a public forum, saying, okay, well, now we're almost curating, you know, what we're going to post, or, what we're representing in front of the library. And it's just food for thought. I'd love to hear some of the other opinions on that.
Can I suggest that in the motion, making a motion as if it being a one-time thing, but include something about basically a moratorium on no flags whatsoever until we set a policy? So that we don't have to, turn someone down in August who wants to fly, God forbid, like a swastika or whatever, something that, we ideally maybe don't want. Can we just say this is approved once if we approve it for June and only June, and no other flags will be flown other than the US flag until the trustees set a flag policy, ideally later in 2022.
So while we're crafting things, you might as well add something about per the request or at the direction of town council. And that puts another layer on us from getting involved in some of the stuff that Amy might be referencing until a formal policy is created. So at least there's another layer from someone going to town council first before they come to us.
That question that to Julie or to Ann, the town council basically deferred making a decision. I mean, they didn't make a policy or something. How was your piece done at the town council exactly?
So we deferred it because we decided it was not worth investing in putting in new flagpoles until the Supreme Court decision came out. And the only reason it's coming to you is because you have 2 flagpoles up in time for June.
Right.
And so that's why, and it's not a directive because we acknowledge that you really have control over that, but it was kind of like a sense of the Senate. So we asked you to consider it. I think now that the Supreme Court has ruled and we have clearer guidance, I believe it's our intention to go back and to make a more fulsome policy that will likely include, I don't know, that will at least look at the possibility of putting up 2 flagpoles if we can keep everything within the realm of government speech.
And this is a question for you or for Catherine. Are there any other places with 2 flagpoles, or is it just library?
The library is the only one that came to our attention.
Okay.
Yeah, the agency mentioned the gazebo has one, but I think it wasn't considered ideal. I can't remember the reasons. I watched their meeting, but that was sort of it, was the gazebo or the library.
I'm not familiar with a flag down Lakeside of the gazebo.
Yeah, I don't recall a gazebo.
Yeah.
We were very clear that we don't want, we never considered over any of the veterans areas. Ideally, we would like it at town hall if we can get to a place where we can have a policy and 2 flagpoles and perhaps a couple of other places. But really, it's the reason it's coming to you is because of the existence of 2 flagpoles. Because that was a very clear desire of the Veterans Board that the HRC and the town council wants to respect.
Yep.
So I want to pull on that a little bit. There are other flagpoles where there are other flags besides the veterans flags flying with the US flag. What was the particular objection in this case?
Well, we've had this policy, we've had this policy for 3 years, and we were limiting it to the AmeriCal because it was a way for us to say entities that want to rent out the AmeriCal can fly a flag on the AmeriCal on the same pole. And quite honestly, there was never any problem with that at all. 3 years later, when we revisited it and wanted to expand it to raise the visibility, that is when all of this came out. But there's nothing legal. There's absolutely nothing that legally says you can't fly these flags, other than what came out in the Supreme Court, which is a different issue. But as a town, I think, given the veterans' desires, we've decided that perhaps the best compromise is 2 flagpoles.
Yep. And it was specifically because it was at the AmeriCal. Is that correct?
And it was specifically at the AmeriCal. And what HRC has said, first of all, it got a little confusing because both of their events are in June. And so they literally were taking down the Pride flag, putting up the Juneteenth flag for a week, taking that down, putting it back up. And so they were looking to expand kind of the real estate they could have so that both could fly and be
Sure.
recognized for the period. So.
Okay.
And we may put another flagpole up at the AmeriCal. It's also quite blocked at the AmeriCal, and so there wasn't a lot of visibility to it.
Do they fly the two flags together on one pole ever, or they swap them one
I
for the
thought they
other?
They were
did.
swapped.
I saw both on up. No?
No, they swapped.
They do
The
swap?
1 year, we've only done both for 1 year, and they swapped. We put the Pride up on June 1st. I think we brought it down, put the Juneteenth up for a week, brought it down, put the Pride back up. Because they were flying on the same pole as the American flag.
But for the purposes of this, they would fly the two together on the library pole at the same time.
Right, on a pole separate from the US flag. Sorry, Anne, did you want to add anything?
No,
Anne's the liaison to the HRC, so she's more familiar with their desires.
No, you explained everything perfectly.
Catherine, you started to list our options, the first of which being what we discussed, kind of aligning with the town council proposal with these kind of parameters about setting a policy in the future. Is the other option to simply not fly the flag?
I don't know if I had other options so
Okay.
much as I was just saying,
Well,
so the town council is endorsing it, is encouraging you to support the request. And as I think as long as you express within the motion that this is a one-time thing and it was not designed to set precedent, that we'd be covered no matter what happens. And go ahead.
I wanted to pull on the thread. You said that the library is a public forum. That doesn't make sense to me in an absolute sense. If we put on our Instagram something about rooting for the Red Sox, to use some of the verbiage from the actual Supreme Court case, there's no right by Yankees fans to have us post something on our Instagram rooting for the Yankees. Right? I mean, we wouldn't entertain that. We're not going to have all 30 Major League Baseball clubs line up and say, I want my day. So what about this makes it
What's the definition of a public forum?
Well, I think the difference is if the Yankee fan goes to court. If you give time, if you're a public library and you give time to someone and then refuse someone else.
So the Supreme Court specifically said that case would be protected, that the city of Boston would have had a right if they had just decided to run a Red Sox flag up there on their own without being petitioned, that they could be open to petition by a Yankees organization.
Yes, but that's because it was government speech. They clarified between government speech and public forum. The reason Boston lost the case was because it's a public forum.
It's because they created a public forum by failing to exercise their process to say no to people.
Right. But we would. Well, part of this is I think this is a deep discussion for another time.
correct.
But I think part of the problem. That will happen with us in September is that we won't necessarily be able to follow exactly what the town does because we may not be government. We may be a public forum.
When you say we, is that the library or is
The
that the
library.
trustees?
The library.
So then, back to my point, is our Instagram a public forum?
And I kind of agree with Jeff, and the reason saying is like, yes, this is a definitely a deep debate. And I guess my question was, did any of this run by legal when got kicked over to us as far as?
Oh, I
from the
believe
town?
Tom Mullen participated in that conversation, didn't he?
Yeah, yeah.
So, I mean, I suppose in some sense, Catherine, you're right, that maybe it's part of this is a discussion for another time. But I would argue that that time should come up pretty darn quickly. If truly every avenue to communicate with the public we have is a public forum, then I'm not sure we want to be on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter.
And
I
Well,
have to,
what's the precedent for someone saying, hey, I really want my copy on your Twitter. I want my copy on their Instagram.
It's a public forum, according to Mr. Mullen, right?
But I think,
but what we post, other people post what they want. We post what we want.
Well, then why wouldn't the same be the true for the flagpole?
I
So
think
now
the
you're running
point,
into, like,
however,
oh.
it goes right back to, we do want to do this. And if something else arises that we don't want to do, we made a decision.
But then that's kind of where was coming in. I've been busy this week, so I wasn't able to listen to the last meeting. But just on principle, it's that if we're going to have that free speech, then it has to be open. If we're going to set that precedent, and I think that, I still kind of stick with hey, if we set the precedent once, then we set it. We can't say, hey, we're going to do this one time and then not do it again, right?
I don't think it's free speech. I think we want to do this. It's our poll. If we didn't want to do it, then we say no.
So, Chris, I would agree with you, but what I'm hearing from Catherine's report on Mr. Mullins is he's saying the opposite. He's saying the library is the definition of public forum, so that we would have to allow anybody who wanted to have equal time, essentially.
Tom Mullen did not speak specifically for the library. He was speaking about it. So I was interpreting what he was saying about the town. And so I'm concerned that our obligation may be different than the town's.
Okay, so that's my understanding then. I thought that there had been a ruling from Mr. Mullen.
No.
I think the town council's waiting. They've gotten another piece of information because of the Supreme Court. I feel like it would be a shame if we weren't allowing those two flags to go out for the month of June. And then I think it is also smart of us to first hear exactly how the town council policy, or whatever word you're going to use, is going to come. And then we look into the legalities and the specifics of going forward. I think we either we do that temporarily and say we need to look at it further after town council has made that first, because they voted to wait. So we're letting this happen just for June. We're going to hear what they say, and then we're going to check in all these things. And you're right. I think it should be it should be looked at carefully and got opinions and see what other libraries could do, or whatever we need to do at that time. But to say that we just want to do this for June, I think it's a bigger thing if the fact that they've been flying for, this has been happening for 3 years, and it's not going to happen this year unless we vote to allow them to use that temporarily. I think that would be a bigger travesty, because I feel like then the only other possibility we would have is to say, no, we can't do it until it's a formal policy. So it's one or the other. It's a temporary one, or it's no policy until whenever. So I go for writing it that it's going to be temporarily for this reason. And we don't deny anything that is legally within our rights, or everything is subjective. Everything that comes before you is subjective of opinions and votes. So I don't see that this would be any different, but I feel like we're trying to do the right thing. And to do it temporarily and wait for the definite, specific, check all the boxes, makes sense to me. But
Yeah.
I don't want to do the wording. That's going to be left.
But
to someone else.
didn't the city of Boston get, take their loss, for lack of a better phrase, because they didn't say no at given times?
Exactly.
Well,
So if our position is we decided we wanted to do this for June, then we haven't made a policy. We elected to make a decision for this month, and we can decide something else next month.
and what Tom Mullen wrote us is, because San Jose does have a policy that passes muster, which says, provides in writing that its flagpoles are not intended to serve as a forum for free expression by the public, and lists flags that may be flown as an expression of the city's official sentiments. And in this case, this would be an expression of the library trustees' official sentiments.
That, for me, that would be perfect. If we already had that policy in place, I should have said up front, I would have voted yes on these two flags, and the meeting would be over.
Well, it's all new. Everybody's just been 24 hours. Everybody's digesting.
So is the motion then, the trustees elected, or the library elected to fly these two flags the month of June 2022? End of story.
Yeah, because it will be government speech, not an expression of free speech. So it's a government.
Yeah, I,
Put that in there?
Chris,
Or
that sounds good to me. I mean, if we want to add a, some kind of clause about review in the event that town council creates a formal town policy, maybe we add something like that. But otherwise, I think you're right. I think we assert that this is government speech. This is our decision, and we move forward as if.
Well, you can also add that the trustees at their discretion reserve the right to accept or reject any type of flag flown on the premises.
That just gets
Yeah,
iffy. Now
Well, I don't know how much you want to put on
Well,
there, but
yeah,
it's
Could we
easy
do
enough for us to just say, we decided we wanted to fly these two flags this June.
I think
But
we
could we
somehow
do
have to
something
say
where-
that this does not create precedent. And if that causes another sentence to say that we will revisit this blank whenever we're going to revisit it, that makes sense. I think we don't know enough to check all these boxes now. And so as Catherine suggested, we're doing this as a one-time June 22, and not creating precedents, with the promise that we look at it again, because we probably do need a policy, right, Catherine?
But I
Could we
think,
adopt?
in the course of doing that for this month, I think somewhere in there, it says we, reserve the right to accept or reject any flag we don't want.
I just don't want to be accused of discriminating against anyone by
That's-
rejecting somebody's flag.
And
Yeah, I don't think you want to go there.
Okay.
I think we really need to have Tom Mullen walk us through what happens in libraries, which would be separate. But for this June, to say that you're in agreement and the town council has requested this and you support their request.
Which is,
it gets us through June, and then we can do some research, and I can present something for September. But there's more is going to come out from the court cases, and there'll be more things. I'm imagining ALA.
And I have a feeling
things
we'll
and-
take it up very quickly.
Yeah, and the fact that the town is going to take it up, whatever we do, we want to balance off of what they do.
Is there any way where we could temporarily adopt the policy from San Jose?
I would not,
No?
no.
I think we want our own policy, and subject to our town council review in our, so I think I think the simplest thing is to say we elected to fly these flags this June. If you want to have a caveat in it that says we want to create a policy at some time in the future, or even shorter is better, but, you know,
I think without a
I'm
policy.
not trying to
though-
craft anything, just, you know, float some stuff out there that we think works. And if you feel the need to have a reference to per the request of town council or assenting to the opinion of town council that this is a good spot to do that, I'm fine with that.
I think it might be important in whatever we say that we're doing this, our considerations are based on the request that was made to us, because it wasn't, I don't think this was on our radar to do until the request came to us. So we might just want to say, you know, to what the language Catherine used at the beginning, that to agree with the town council's proposal or endorsement of having the library, because the library is, at this point, it's the only site that could handle that with the 2 flagpoles. I mean, because I think is addressing a need for the town, and being in a resource in that way. And I know there was some discussion at one point, Catherine, we weren't even sure if that flagpole was a viable option. So I think if we had determined the flagpole, the second flagpole wasn't even working, then we wouldn't be, I don't think we'd be having a discussion about using the prime, I don't know. So I think tying it in, making the connection that we're doing this.
We're supporting a request.
Yeah.
They
thank you.
sent to the request of town council, and the trustees decided to fly a Juneteenth and a pride flag.
I
for the
would
month of
say,
June.
I would be careful with the words, not that we decided, that not that we decided to fly the flags, that we decided to assent to town council's request.
Yeah, just approve the request.
Yeah. Because then I think that way, that might, you know, kind of explicate us from being like, okay, we decided to fly these flags for this specific purpose.
Well, and that was something I said at the beginning. We're gonna, you know, honor the request or per the request or assent to the request of town council. But I think the second layer, aside from the assenting to town council, is that, yeah, we're entitled to make a decision, because down the road, there may be a flag that we don't want there.
Right. Yeah, we are responsible for the building and grounds of the library as the trustees. We don't want to abdicate that responsibility.
Catherine, are you scratching away at a motion?
Am I what? I don't make the motions.
I think it's about 3 pages long at this point.
Yeah, that's
just
why,
so
that's
everybody
why I'm
knows.
not a trust, that's why I'm not a
Typing
trustee.
away.
How about
Well, I mean,
a
I
motion?
if we want to start kind of wordsmithing it, you know, we're going to assent to the request of town council.
Yeah, here's something to throw darts at. Motion to approve the request from town council to fly pride and Juneteenth flags for the calendar month of June 2022.
I like
Yeah.
it.
So moved.
Sold.
Amy to Chris,
Works.
discussion.
Do we want to start putting policy on our immediate radar, or are we going to wait from town council CIL and let them do a policy first?
Oh, we can discuss it. It can certainly go on the agenda, but
Yeah.
for conversation.
This is being recorded, so I think we all want to take another look at it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So.
Right. We don't want to create something counter to the town. It's something that dovetails with the town. So maybe we talk about it some more and wait for the final policy document from the council. Maybe hear from Mr. Mullins.
Well, and to that end, maybe we invite Tom to a meeting and let him have a conversation with us.
if he's up for that.
He'll also probably be presenting at town council, perhaps. You can send a representative there too, and we
Okay.
could even do I don't know, it has to be a
Good
formal
idea.
joint meeting, but
Yeah.
we could all ask our questions at the same time.
Mhm.
Julie, can you give us a heads up on when that comes up on the agenda? I don't know if that's on your next meeting or if it's gonna be.
I
further-
will, we're setting the agenda tomorrow. I have a meeting tomorrow morning, so I will certainly keep you apprised of that.
Thank you.
And Catherine, I don't know whether anybody shared Tom's kind of quick analysis of the Supreme Court, but we'll make sure that gets circulated to everybody as well.
Great, thank you.
Okay.
Great, thanks. Jeff, can I just make sure I got your language correct for the minutes? So you made a motion to approve town council's request to fly the Pride and Juneteenth flags on the library's second flagpole. I added myself separate from the American and POW flags for the calendar month of June 2022.
No, that's it. I do like the addition of the second flagpole, just for clarification. Yeah. Okay, any other discussion on the motion as amended?
Nope.
Okay, we'll take a roll call vote. We'll go through my participant list.
Jeff, can we just, one other thing, just to make sure it's correct. We don't want to include any language there about this not setting a precedent. Do we need to include that, or we just kind of want to approve the request and then it's reflected in the meeting notes that we'll look, the library trustees will look into this further?
Laurie, if you're approving a request, then the request came from an outside body, i.e. town council. So we're not really setting precedent. We approved
Okay.
a request from another party.
Okay, that
Could have
sounds fair.
not approved it.
I think that cover, I agree that I think that covers what we wanted to say there, but if folks disagree, now's the time to speak up.
Can you just read that one more time for me, Laura?
So
Sure.
Laura, could you say that again?
Sure. Quinn made a motion to approve the town council's request to fly the Pride and Juneteenth flags on the library's second flagpole, separate from the American and POW flags, for the calendar month of June 2022. I don't know if I can put things in the chat or not. I'm not sure if that. That
No,
gives
I
it a
don't think
specific
so.
time frame, which what
Yeah,
you,
the only thing I would think maybe to add, and maybe I'm splitting hairs, is the town council's request on, on or about whatever day it was.
okay,
Like that, because that now it's not like, hey, they request, like we had a specific request for a specific action, and
It was
We-
April 25th.
Oh, good, thank you. I was just looking at that.
I think, yeah, having some of those specifics in there really leaves it
Mhm.
less open-ended. Great call.
Okay,
So the amended amendment is up for approval.
Take three.
okay. Right, so the motion with the two amendments, one to specify which flagpole and one to specify the date of the request. Any other discussion before we vote?
I'm good.
Okay. All right, so the motion to approve, Amy,
Yes.
Chris,
Yes.
Jackie,
Yes.
Laura,
Yes,
Paul,
Yes,
Susan,
Yes.
and I am a yes. Did I miss anybody else?
negative.
All right, I believe that is a unanimous approval.
Thank you.
We just threw Jackie into the deep end here.
Did.
Yeah. Welcome, Jackie.
I'm glad to be here. I
Nothing
only
like
got to say
having
one
Supreme
word.
Court rule one day and it come right down to the municipal level the next day.
I tried to be prepared. I watched the town council meeting again last night, and it was so funny to hear everybody say, well, we're not going to have a decision from the Supreme Court for months. And I was like,
Right.
oh, you guys don't know.
You should have seen our phone blowing up yesterday.
Yeah.
But it was a really interesting discussion. I mean, that was probably one of my more interesting town council meetings. I generally try to watch them all, but that was a,
Should, I'd love to chat. Should we adjourn the meeting?
Yeah, so I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second,
Okay. Let's go around the horn again. Amy,
yes.
Chris,
yes.
Jackie,
Yes.
Paul,
Yes.
Laura,
Yes.
Susan,
Yes.
and I'm a yes. Did I miss anybody? Okay. All right. Thanks, everybody.